Thank you, Madam Chair. A pleasant good evening to all our listeners who have tuned in via the various platforms. I give recognition to Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, who is sitting in on the behalf of the Prime Minister, and to my fellow panelists. Within the overarching theme for this evening, St. Kitts and Nevis, One Nation Under God, my area of focus is God's will for his people, which can be interpreted as what is God's purpose for us as a nation. In his book entitled Life Purpose, David Kalaman said, "If we fail to recognize the purpose of God for the existence of our nation, we are sinning against the future of our nation. Therefore, as a nation, it is not enough to exist. We must exist intentionally. We must exist to fulfill God's plan for us as a people. It is important, therefore, to search the scriptures to see what God has to say about his nation or his will for his nation. For this presentation, I will look at his sovereign will and his specific will. God's sovereign will is that every nation follows him and acknowledges him as the one true God. Psalm 103, verse 9. The Lord establishes his throne in the heaven. His sovereignty ruleth over all. In Exodus 20 and verse 3, it says, You shall have no other God before me. Also, in Psalm 33:12 says, Blessed, which means fortunate, prosperous, and favored by God, is the nation whose God is the Lord. Under the specific will, when it comes to a nation in Scripture, God deals with nations in three ways. By their 1, families, 2, language, and 3, land. In Genesis 10:5, it reads, By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his language and after his families. Families are the fundamental block of strong societies. God's will is for the family to train up a child in the way he or she should go. He expects us to inculcate values in our children. Remember, values are not taught. They are caught. They must be modeled. Our language makes us peculiar or unique. God's will is to reform nations by the way we get the message or information out there where it's needed. As a nation whose main industry is tourism, God's will is that we point our visitors to him in the way we interact and how we do business with them. This will cause them to acknowledge the God that we serve. On the land, we sing from our national anthem, O Land of Beauty, our country where peace abounds. The will of God is that the land be peaceful. In Isaiah 60 and verse 18, it says, Violence shall no longer be heard in your land. God determines the boundaries of our habitation. He has given this land to us. All that God has blessed us with as a nation, such as our beaches, our mountains, clean water, agricultural produce, and even our human resources, must never be taken for granted. In conclusion, Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 19 says, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your seed may live. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Isaac. We're now going to hear